Hello, my name is Sebastian Barrera, and I'm gonna start with this quote. A global sense of place has come to be seen as reactionary, but is it possible for a sense of place to be progressive, not self-closing and defensive, but outward-looking? This text from Dory Massey became a particular point for me when reflecting on how we make sense of the place we live and the place we come from, and became an entry point to start exploring how can we reimagine the engagement of Colombian diaspora in solving our country's challenges. The reason behind this is because the number of people leaving Colombia to study abroad keeps growing. But beyond the number is the fact that this is a phenomenon that will keep increasing over time. Historically, people used to go to 4 or 5 specific countries, and it was easy to find them. But right now, the new generation of young travelers are getting more dispersed across the globe. In this context, the effort has always been towards repatriation. As you can see here, this is the last governmental program called It's Time to Come Back, aiming to bring back 72 renowned scientists with an $8 million investment. But not everyone necessarily wants to move back, at least not right now. And not everyone is a scientist. And the second option, it has been to formally organize the diaspora to reconnect brain power to Colombia. So at this point, I set out myself to understand how these organizations work, how effective they were, and why, after 20 years, we're still focusing our only efforts on creating incentives for people to come back. And what I realized is that these organizations struggle to work because they're highly bureaucratic, and every effort that you do has to go through the hands of the government. And second of all, is that these organizations are not connecting with the new generation of young travelers, mostly because this new generation doesn't live by the traditional way we think about fatherland, about nation, but they do live for specific problems that are rooted in the communities they're coming from. At the end, I feel that any effort that you do in our current reality, in this context, any effort that you do to try to repatriate someone is still an old way of conceiving this problem. So I had a different idea, and I decided to create a channel for the new generation of Colombians abroad to reconnect with the country in a direct exchange of knowledge. And by this, I mean to create a space for people to collaborate as individuals in a way that fits their needs and their conditions abroad, directly with organizations in the social sector in Colombia, which are the organizations that need the most of it, but usually can access to this kind of knowledge. So instead of thinking of doing it in such a linear, rigid, and highly bureaucratic way, we can start thinking of more flexible ways of engaging people, where we acknowledge that people, according to their interest, no matter where they are, they can achieve things without the need to be part of an institution. And that's how I got to Encargo, which is an experiment that welcomes individuals abroad to share knowledge with an organization back home with a need through notebooks that are traveling around the globe. Books that are physically touching and connecting people by topic of interest in a very personal and unique way. The reason I decided to work with books is because I needed something to be iconic, something that had that kind of presence, where we could gather questions that were contextually relevant, framed by people working in the local context. And it could become really engaging in the way we deal with them. So these books become these tokens that we carry with us for 3 days, we draw on them, and then we pass them on through our networks. In order to do this, first, I reach an organization with a need but without access. Econexus, in this case, is an organization that is involved in market creation for vulnerable communities using environmentally sound practices. So I framed their needs so that other people could easily understand what they do, and I set up some basic protocols. And this part is really important because this idea depended on me losing control of it. It is an entirely decentralized experience that relies on people following through. So in order to do that, I had to create a really clear and simple protocols to succeed. And that's how the books started to travel. The first one went to Belgium. Afterwards, they went to Mexico and keeps traveling around Mexico right now. The second one has been traveling through the US West Coast, and it's going to Chicago. This third one got lost trying to reach Buenos Aires, but it will be sent again. Another one has been traveling through New York, Houston, and is going to Thailand. But most important here is the fact that these books are breaking those geographical silos that diaspora organizations usually fall in when they're trying to bring people together. And most important is what came back from this. We got really timely, relevant information. From best practices from other parts of the world, to potential partnerships with other NGOs, possible collaborations with other people doing similar work, and even research studies that are specific to the geographical regions that these organizations work in Colombia. So it's really important. Right now, the books are still out because there's a path they need to follow before they come back, but the hard evidence is in. And this proved to be a really exciting way of engaging diaspora, especially those who couldn't find before an option to share knowledge back home, And hopefully, what I expect from this is that this experience will shed new light on how organizations in Colombia can become more porous when relating to non-organized networks of individuals living abroad, and so they could see the potential and value in it. So we can start reimagining the engagement of Colombian diaspora in a more progressive and in a more outward-looking way. Thanks.